Welcome back to another episode of Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
Today, it's a DAMChats session, and we are delighted to have Anne Graham with us. Hi, Anne.
Hello, hello.
So we're actually going to be chatting today kind of after the Neurodiversity Celebration week from last week, but we wanted to catch up with you and we wanted to have a chat about you and something that you've actually created. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it, and then we can hear your story from the start, I guess?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for having us. And honestly, thanks for featuring the week, because I think to speak to the parents who are perhaps the expat community, neurodivergency, it feels like it's quite a prevalent thing, but practically speaking, it's quite a, challenging thing for a lot of parents. And I think culturally having some differences as well, certainly adds to that. And that's kind of the origin story behind some of why I'm here, which is to talk about a book that we've just launched the last couple of weeks. It's called JellyPie Firefly. So I created it along with my co-author, Marika Stake, our illustrator, Emma Gandolfi, and with the help of a known friend of the pod, Dr. Naomi Gibson, where we got together after, I had multiple years dealing with my child who in the education system here in the Netherlands very obviously had some struggles, had some obvious kind of gaps in her education, but she was also in a Dutch bilingual school. And so it's very easy, I think, for us as expats, but I think parents in general, to assume there's something perhaps, either we're not doing right. Are we spending enough time in lessons? Perhaps it's a language barrier. Perhaps it's a cultural misunderstanding. When you see children struggling, the kind of first thing you tell yourself is, it must be me. It must be some other kind of factor. And it took quite a lot of years and multiple different iterations before we finally were faced with a situation where we had to take her to be diagnosed. So in her group 3 lessons, the school advised us that they did not feel capable to support her, and essentially told us we should look for another educational pathway for her. And to be a parent to a child and facing the reality of, having to find a better education system for her, it was sort of what do we do? And we felt very helpless, and it was a very difficult moment. But to be honest, it was a solution that felt like a problem at the time. The solution really came by getting her into, and we are in the international school system in the Netherlands. So for those who know, the Denise School or the Esprit schools were at ACE, Amsterdam International Community School. And, a big credit to them that upon her arrival to the school, the conversation was known. Some of the challenges were cited, the educational report was provided, and it was basically treated as we'll figure this out together. And, the pathway from the feeling of failure to, okay, now there's a way to see potential success. I mean, I really can't even express the relief and the feeling that provided of support, really, and that we could, help our daughter. But what led to the creation of the book was getting her into a system that was supportive, getting her to be diagnosed, getting an independent assessment that then led to an individualized education plan. And for those with neurodiverse family members, students, and even now adults as well, I think the individualized piece is such a critical part of success, looking at it through, how contributions can be best sought by giving very standard, very easy to accommodate things, giving you safe spaces for sound reductions, giving task completion types of, charts and activities for, in this case for children, but I think a lot of this applies to adults as well, right? So formulating all of that really presented to us as parents and my daughter, who at the time was 7, the reality that, her education day to day would start to look a bit different. And so what do we as parents do? Google it and start buying a bunch of books, buying a bunch of how-tos, and you kind of panic and you come up with a list of the typical, top recommended books on Amazon and otherwise, and start getting a bunch of things that tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it didn't actually help, to be honest. Like, a lot of the content really didn't help me. It wasn't age appropriate in nature. It wasn't designed to perhaps speak at a child's level. It wasn't really designed to facilitate dialogue. And frankly, it didn't solve the problem of explaining to a very bright child that if she was given some kind of label of ADHD, that those letters stand for terrible words like deficit and disorder. And what does that really mean? And so that created this kind of fever dream of a late night writing of this magical character, JellyPie Firefly, and the development of this children's book is really, the inspiration and the story behind it. And it exists as for a young age range. So it's about 3 to 10 to do just that, is to create dialogue for children and their carers about navigating the letters ADHD.
It's so wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah,
what a story.
Kudos to you. For actually doing that.
Jeez.
I have a couple of questions I'd really like. I'm sure many of the listeners will actually really want to know is, first off, what was it that was making her stand out that you might have seen or the teachers were seeing from her first school?
Yeah, it's a good flag. And I think especially for your audience, because, the cultural educations that we all come from, there's different nuances to it. Yeah. In our experience with the Dutch system, there's quite a lot of kind of teach and then individual activity, workbooks, things like that. You'll find on the Kickstarter that we did, and we had a very successful run on the Kickstarter, huge support from the Amsterdam community, because we talked openly about the challenges that we faced in school, such as, if you give a neurodivergent child a workbook, so, she was 6 and 7 around this time, you didn't get completed worksheets back. What I got were, and it's on the Kickstarter, you should look at the visuals, pages and pages and pages of drawings. So she would take figures and make them dragons when you were supposed to be crafting 3s and 4s and 7s and 8s, or she would take, whole workbooks and start taking the pictures and writing things, in her own languages around them that had nothing to do with lessons. And I think it just demonstrated to me, and probably a lot of neurodivergent parents can relate, about that brain functionality for all of us, but in particular for kids, is, you have to have the right kinds of triggers to get their strengths, right? And it was pretty obvious that the struggles like task completion were not going to be done by, okay, do this, and then come back to us when you're done. My daughter needs quite a lot of regular affirmation that, in fact, she's doing the things she's being asked to do. She needs the ability to prioritize and focus. It can't be a long list. If it's a long list, you will be lucky to get one thing. If it's one thing, it will get done. And I think a lot of the challenges as well are, how do you find a healthy balance of identifying the unique needs your child has and making a healthy and productive relationship with the teachers and educators that support them, right? The first thing I say, and one of the things we did with the book, was actually we have a copy set aside for teachers, counselors, and schools. So for anyone who hears this, if you're from that space, email us at jellypiefirefly@gmail.com, because we have books for these groups. Because I recognize that the hardest job you can have is as a teacher, an educator, and a counselor, because you're the front end of this, right? And you have parents that are on your case and with kids, and they are superheroes. We all know they're superheroes. It's a difficult job. And I think what parents tend to do is kind of self-negotiate, like how much they think they can ask for, right? Like, oh, I can't ask for too much. There's 20 kids in the classroom. If I ask for something just for them, then I'm the needy parent. Like, we all kind of self-negotiate what we think we can do. And I think the biggest unlock for me was feeling confident that the right dialogue will actually solve problems for the teachers, educators, counselors, and hopefully create better environments for the classroom. So while you think it's an individual exercise that you're supporting your child for having this conversation, often it's about building a better environment for everyone in the classroom, right? My daughter very much has the H, and she was a child who in a group situation struggled to sit still or to pay attention to a lesson. And yes, that is disruptive for other children. So finding tactics for her emotional regulation, things that could help her, and think fidget spinners and things that are simple, things that don't cost a lot, they don't take a lot of time. Implementing those made huge, huge differences for her, but also to, make a more productive classroom. And I think you need educators who are willing to discuss it at that level, so it doesn't feel so big and intimidating, to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's exactly what you say. It's like, you don't want to be that parent in the school, kind of like, oh, like my child needs a little bit extra, and you don't want to be that awkwardness in the conversation. The next question I had for you was, so once you had actually got this diagnosed, was there a support group out there for you? Was there something that was not just the Dutch system of here you go, but was there actually anything that you found accessible and useful for yourself here in Amsterdam?
Well, it's interesting. One of the reasons we connected with Naomi, So Dr. Naomi Gibson contributed heavily to the book by actually helping us think about the context through the lens of what therapy helps to achieve, right? So there's a whole parent guide that she's added to the back. And co-author Marika and I were in a session with Dr. Naomi around the time that I was contending with this. It was pre-diagnosis, but getting close to diagnosis. And that was really helpful to put into context a lot of the thinking about what I said to her earlier, which is how parents tend to self-reflect, that the things with their children are often their issues or things that they think they're not addressing. I mean, a lot of parenting is, our own insecurities, right? And it was wonderful to have that kind of reinforcement around the general difficulties with motherhood and sort of the community of motherhood to start, because then when the diagnosis came, I did not feel so personal about it. And I know that if I had been a bit more vulnerable as a mother, I would have had a lot more burden of kind of, how did I not see it sooner? How did I not, how have I not been a better mother, raising my voice? How dare I? I mean, you really question yourself a lot, right? And then the post-diagnosis, really, the community for me revolved a lot around the school. Of course, the therapist working with our daughter, she also then went through additional support that was doing some of the physiotherapy things to help her with some motion sensory deficits that she also has. She has dyslexia, so she was also working with some reading teachers. So we put quite a lot into the educational element because she'd also been quite behind. And I found that unlocked for me a lot of parents that were also in the community that maybe I would not have necessarily connected with. They had children in other classrooms or different ages. And generally now, I think I find a lot of people open up a lot about their own insecurities, their own situations to open that up. So I think no kind of single group perhaps to identify, but at least for me, and maybe thoughts for other parents, is don't hesitate feeling like you can open up about it, because I think the more you feel confident opening up, the more you find people will open up back to you. And it's a great way to make kind of a community and an organic community around you. I mean, perfect example being, so Marika's children, as far as we know, no neurodiversity, but she completely relates to the story just as a mother. Emma is just she's young, she doesn't have children. She just related to the story as somebody who's highly creative and wanted to tell a beautiful, a kind of atypical, again, neurodivergent being, a beautiful brain and a brain that achieves many wonderful things. My daughter did the first round of illustrations, and Emma really, first round of illustrations, air quotes, right? That she played around with the story. But Emma used those to have a child's perspective, and of course, Naomi working with children. So I don't think you have to be somebody with diagnoses to feel like you're part of the community.
That's a fair point.
And I think it's so great that you really are so open about this. And now you've also put a book out there, because that is also for parents who already have a diagnosis, maybe for their children or themselves even, that's super helpful, but also in recognizing like, oh, wait a minute, we struggle with that too. We struggle with that too. And a diagnosis can, of course, with all the challenges that it comes with, it can also be such a help and such a relief, because finally you have an angle that you can work with, and you can try out different things, and you can really get everyone on board, and you're not just the outstanding child who's always in trouble, so you can really start having the conversations and work with people. And I'm so happy to hear that your new school is so open about it and really has this whole approach of how can we make this work for everyone. And some of the techniques, like you said, are beneficial to anyone in the classroom. It's always any child who's in group 3 or 1 or 2 is happy if they have one task on their list and not 10. So I guess
exactly. Adults, I mean, right?
Yeah,
like, how much do we like a shorter task?
I wish I had a list with one thing to do on. So yeah, so I think this is really great, like that you're taking this kind of like trailblazer attitude and be like, okay, I'm here, I'm standing up for it, I'm visible, my daughter is visible. She also knows that this is not something that she needs to be shush about, or she can't tell anyone, or she'll be judged. But now she has her own book about this, and she can be so proud that she inspired this story. And this is something that I guess will always be like a trophy for her, that she knows her specialty made this special book and she contributed to it, and she can light also for other children, that she can tell them it's all right, and I can do it, and you can do it, and we can just work it out together.
It's such a, absolutely, and it's such a real life thing. And the purpose of the book is to create a safe space for the conversation, right? And it's a children's book because the conversation needs to happen at this level, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, right? And exactly what you said is, I'll give a real life example. Recently, there had, kids, some of them, yeah, and you just know. But when the kid comes home and they tell you about their perception of their kids and things, and you kind of get the protective parent, or is there a bully? Is there whatever? Is somebody being mean to you? And my daughter had a child in her class who, had some behavioral things, and she was kind of complaining about her and stuff. And I'd always say, okay, just you go to your corner, she go to her corner, just whatever. And of course she knows all the ins and outs. She probably walks around with JellyPie. She knows the ADHD words are not bad. They're not scary. They're nothing to be ashamed of, afraid of, and there's certainly nothing to hide. And this girl in her class was recently diagnosed. And she came home, my daughter came home, and I get a bit misty-eyed thinking about it, but she said, Mommy, this girl, do you know what she has? She has ADHD. And that just means sometimes she didn't know that she wasn't doing something that I didn't like so much, right? And you put it in that perspective of also just at a human level, giving people a bit of space and a bit of forgiveness for not being at our best, not being, always what society or people around us maybe want us to show up as. And really the complexity and difficulties of childhood are enough on their own to add this in. I mean, devices like this, and the point you made earlier, Claudia, so she's obviously been connected through us, the Kickstarter, and knows some of the people in the community that have backed us. And she's doing a ton of amazing work. I'd really encourage anybody who's looking for support to seek her out and her group. And I'm sure you guys will have on the pod and her website and everything. So you can get it directly from her. But, she came to the launch party and we had a great conversation because we hadn't been able to meet in person before. And she said, that is the biggest thing that in her work, where she's working with families and with children, is being able to empower children to communicate about themselves. And she was wonderful and so supportive to say that this is exactly the kind of device, exactly the kind of vehicle you need to allow children something they can relate to, they can understand, they can use in their own way. I mean, the character, it's not a story you say goes on a journey, it starts here and ends here. It's actually a series of vignettes, and there's these scenarios, and a lot of them, allude to things like task completion, emotional regulation, and just the ability to still, kind of function in situations that are very non-neurodivergent, right? And she was saying, she said, when are you writing one about autism? Hey, Claudia, thank you, but I really got to get this one out the door first. But her point being is, if you can help children to understand what the positive side of some of the labeling, quote unquote labeling, can be, which is really using it as a tool to talk about themselves, who they are, how people should expect they can be, how people can also expect them to show up. It can be a huge, huge help. And I took that as, the first thing for me in writing the book was handing the first copy to my daughter, which I did. The second thing was having somebody, Claudia's profession, doing the kind of work that she does, which is brave, difficult, and needs all the support it can get, is having somebody like her say that it helped.
Get the next book out.
Whew. Deep breath. Sure, I'll add that to the list. That's number 2.
Yeah. Well, actually, the next question was going to actually be, are you going to translate it into Dutch?
So I've had the question. I have a wonderful colleague who's volunteered, and I may take her up on it. It's a real consideration as well, also because the moniker, the ADHD, because in the book we use the letters differently, right? We say it stands for awesome, dynamic, happy, different. But you know what? Being different is a wonderful thing, so we take those letters, and that's a really interesting part of it. And it does translate. Not all languages translate exactly ADHD, but in Dutch, I'm told it does. So yeah, it's also probably on the list to get that out there. And I'd say too, if there's enough people who want to reach out and tell us that would be of value to them, that helps reinforce it. And it's really the community indicating that it can be meaningful. And if it is, then we will do it.
Yeah, what I really love about the whole approach is that it really takes this whole thing of, I have a diagnosis that I need to get rid of. Like, this is something that I need to repair, or I need to override, or I need to whatever I tell myself that I need to do with this thing, actually now you're taking the approach like this is a part of me that I can embrace, and this is how it looks, and this is where it can play out. And this is actually where it helps me because I can be hyper focused on something, and I can do that, and I can be super creative, and I can do all these things where it's really the conversation has shifted more and more to, and especially also this other layer of your daughter being female and being diagnosed so early, because we as women get diagnosed very late, if even with ADHD. And it's always like we have all these mechanisms to touch it up. And then when I hear also your daughter being very creative and drawing, it's like, oh yeah, she's like this little dreamer in her own world, la 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 la. And then
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like this from
yeah,
teachers, like yeah, and then they're like, ah, yes, yeah, let her do her thing. Like she's like on
they'll
another
grow out of
planet.
it.
But yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So now,
yeah. The
but
favorite
now
phrase, they'll grow out of it. Yeah.
exactly. So now it's really this whole, no, I will not grow out of it. I will not get rid of it. I will integrate it and I will make myself shine with it. And this is how I will do it. And this is really taking this whole new perspective on this where children can feel empowered, and instead of something's wrong with me, I have to fix this. I need to work so hard on myself with all these tools to not show it, to make it go away because I can't deal with it. But now it's really, yes, this can be my superpower and I can embrace it and I can really work on it, make it shine like every other characteristic that I have in me.
It's absolutely a superpower. I mean, we use a firefly because it glows and the glow is magic, and we talk a bit about that because I think there's an element we can all appreciate, young, old, and otherwise, neurodivergent, non-divergent, to say that what's special about us and how we present that can be and should be reinforced. And I think the struggle that I had originally, and I'm always day to day trying to overcome it, is this feeling that like it's too much. You are asking for too much. It's too much to change. It's too much to, deviate from the routine. And I think what was really inspiring about the people around us who were helping her, but honestly, a lot of it was helping us, right? Parents. It was just the reality that these are not big swings. These are things that are very simple in a lot of ways. And again, like I said, they support the whole classroom, but a lot of these things, they're simplistic in nature because you don't need to have a big change with a lot of what presents challenges. I think a lot of people know now with autism and kind of the noise reduction headphones, also very helpful for ADHD children, to even take the shame out of being the one kid who's wearing headphones and just say, hey, yeah, cool, go wear some pink headphones. I mean, very simple, very easy to execute, and things that I think everyone can agree that there's no reason not to have a bit of different floating around, be it a classroom, a workplace, home, on the street. Yeah, it's a good thing. It glows brightly.
So sweet. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope you actually had a great Neurodiversity Celebration Week last week, and that you and Claudia at the Ludisa workshop had a great day together. I believe you were reading the book.
Yeah. I had a great group, read the book, did a wonderful session on Saturday. We actually Thursday night, our illustrator, Emma, as well, with some kids. And we were able to give out some JellyPie Firefly stickers to some of the families and kids, which I think was a nice form of inspiration to let them, think of their own stories and narratives as well, which is a really special part about the book. So yeah, it was a great week. And I think, again, having a week like this to raise awareness and just bring people in who maybe wouldn't necessarily look for this kind of community otherwise, it's great. And it's great to have support from yourselves, from others, to talk about it. Yeah, we're out there. We just all have to find each other.
I'm hoping to find those firefly stickers now stuck around Amsterdam. And that, when it's getting to summer and the dusk is settling, you start to see these little glowy stickers around the place. I'm not asking much, but I'm just asking for a route.
We Bankseed. Yeah, we Bankseed this and sort of went gorilla all over the buildings. I hope so. Best marketing I could ask for.
There you go. There's our goals for the summer. We're all going to go out. We're all going to meet at sundusk. We're all going to grab a pile of them and just do one route around the city. Well, thank you so much, Anne. We're going to fill in all your details on the show notes so people can actually track you. Again, I really want to reiterate what you actually said about if there's anyone out there in the school system with counselors, with anyone who's actually in a support network, that you're going to be able to reach out to them to be able to get a copy of this book. No pressure. We're still going to be pressuring for that Dutch language as well, even more multilingual options as well. If there's anyone out there who is a professional translator, also maybe get in contact with her and offer your services to get this book also into as many languages as possible. Bibliotherapy is honestly one of the best things I've ever come across, that it helps children to understand They're a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And having this book is actually going to empower them to make them feel an equal in this world that they're now living in, and not just a label, and that they're a child and this is how you're going to be and this is how your world's going to be. But now it's going to be a case of let's create your world together. Congratulations. Really looking forward to seeing this book in all manners, all forms, consultancy bureaus, the libraries, the schools, community centers, anywhere and everywhere. So congratulations on all the hard work, because we now found out how much Anne is actually working very hard on multiple different things, not just as an author. Thank you so much for joining us. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to everybody listening. And yeah, appreciate talking about the damn parenting, because man, the struggles are real.
That's for sure.
And if you want to hear more about this damn parenting from us, every Wednesday we are dropping an expert episode on this podcast. And every Monday we are dropping a DAMChats, where we either have someone like Anne come on for a quick conversation about a topic that has come up over the week, or it's even I chatting away about something that agitated us over the week or we found super interesting and worthwhile to share. If you want to catch us, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. We are also on YouTube and, of course, Instagram, Damn Parenting Podcast. And with that, I will leave you into your day, whatever time it might be that you're listening to this episode, and we will hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.